and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does the board have any conflicts of interest to announce at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to general public input. If any members of the audience would like to address the board not pertaining to items on the agenda, go ahead and step forward to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
I know you've missed me.
Yes,
you all
we
know
missed
who I
you.
am. Phyllis
Welcome
Ludwig,
back.
Welcome back.
9205, County Road 521. As you know, the seniors, including me, have been wanting to get a key to the center since we recovered from the COVID epidemic and all, and we still can't get one. And the vice president was told the reason being that I was handing the key out to different people, which is not true. I called the two entities that were mentioned. The Rotary Club didn't even know what I was talking about. They said they only rented one time 4 years ago, and they themselves paid the rent and got the key. The other entity, the fire department, had no idea what I was talking about. So I want this cleared up. I see no reason we can't have a key. The yoga class that goes down there has one, and we are seniors. We should be able to use the building accordingly. And there was also an email sent to, I don't know if it's Becky or who, on how dirty we left it one time. It did not happen. The door was left open for Vicki to go lock it up. Someone evidently came in after us. And there was 3 of us, at least 2. We always check when we leave to make sure that it is in shape enough for someone else. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I know you have not missed me. So
You can go ahead and raise that up.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. Just things off of the agenda were, it appears that with the packet that Nicole handed out last time, we have quite a few projects coming our way. And I'm hoping that the board looks at each one and kind of now has a chance to fit those into a master plan. Hundreds and hundreds of people coming to town, new houses, all kinds of traffic, new commercial. Now's our chance to really get a handle on maybe what we hope for Bayfield into the future. So encourage you to look at them seriously. The developers are coming. Let's get everything out of them that we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom? All right, moving on. Did everybody get a chance to look at the agenda?
I'd move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
No.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 against.
All right, did everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from March 1st, 2022?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes from March 1st, 2022 as presented by the town clerk.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to department reports. Becky, do you have anything to add to your report?
One highlight, we did go ahead and hire Antonio Ortiz as our rec coordinator. He started mid-February and hit the ground running, pretty much putting together all the youth and adult sports. So just wanted to give you guys a heads up that we do got another staff in the rec department now, and he's doing really well. So,
All right, does the board have any questions for Becky? All right, moving on to Katie, town manager report. Do you have anything to add to your report?
I don't have anything to add. I think I want to make sure that you're aware that we have a new program that the town is eligible vendor. It's called LIWAP. And so in other words, if a town utility customer, whether water or sewer, is in arrears of their water or sewer payment and they're eligible for LEAP, they can actually get all of their past bills paid for by this program. When we signed up as a vendor, we automatically had 4 that were already in the system that have already been asked about this program. And of course, we certainly hope that they take advantage of it. I know that the LEAP application program ends in April, and I'm not really sure when that program, if they keep that application program open for the LIWAP. But anyway, it is a program, and it definitely will help those that are past due. So if you hear of somebody that's eligible, just make sure that they're aware of that.
Are we doing any outreach to people that we know are in the arrears?
So I do know that we have customers that are in their arrears, and we're trying to get that information out. I think we have one customer that has been pretty vocal with town staff and has refused to sign up to LEAP. But this is another option. So we certainly encourage them to sign it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Katie? All right, moving on to our financial agenda items. Do we have any general public input pertaining to any of the financial agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move on to the finance director report.
Sure. So at the end of February, 16% of the fiscal year had lapsed, and so there's not a lot of changes at this time. But in the general fund, you'll see that we do have some income coming into the youth and adult athletic programs. These are funds that are paid in advance for sports that are going to happen later. And I want to also remind you that the newly elected officials that will take seats at the next meeting, they will receive the new salaries that were adopted by Ordinance 431 on April 14th of 2020. And right now, the sewer, water, and garbage funds are all on track at this point.
Okay, any questions for Kathy? If everyone's had a chance to review the financial statement, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the February 2022 financial statement.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
Sales tax is included in your packet for discussion. It is still trending nicely upward. Moving on to Civic Plus website.
So we migrated from a website that was created by a local developer to SIPA, which is the statewide internet portal authority. It has been very difficult to manage, and of course we still don't have the capacity because it is so difficult to manage to put the the Parks and Rec, Bayfield Parks and Rec on that, and also the Marshal's office. So in fact, the Marshal's office website is outdated. There's some pictures in there that some of the officers haven't been here for quite a while, or at least the 2 years I've been here. So anyway, we're asking the board to authorize the $3,900 to move to Civic Plus. Civic Plus is a national organization. They have this special price for any municipality or any local government that's less than 10,000 people. I thought this was very reasonable. Actually, I don't necessarily need to go to you for this amount, but I felt it was really important to be transparent in the fact that we would like to migrate to a much more usable and more local government type of website. This also gives us the option of people that want to get the agenda, they can sign up on the website. They don't have to email us directly. The agenda will be done, and when it comes they would automatically get it. For all kinds of other notifications, maybe they want to know more information about garage sales that are going on, or have a garage sale. So those are all things that would be better use of Civics Plus. And of course, there's quite a few pages in there explaining what, you know, the benefit of Civics Plus.
What are we currently paying?
$0 per month, per year.
But I will tell you, as far as websites go, this is cheap for a good website. Any other questions or comments?
Did we get any other quotes from anybody else?
No, I have actually I've used Civic Plus myself, and I contacted quite a few municipalities in the area, and they are using Civics Plus. This is an amount that does not require to go out for bids.
All
I
right.
feel like you should be able to find all the information on one webpage, and so it could be confusing having 3 different pages for
Yeah,
our
I think
town.
this is-
So it makes sense to consolidate it, and if this is the way to do it, and if it is the best priced option to do it, I'm fully in support of.
I think the fact that it's so user-friendly as well.
Yeah, you spent quite a bit more than $3,900 in a staff in 2020, just migrating it, and it's still not where we need it. So, in the last year, we spent a lot of time on it, it's just not gonna get there.
All right, if there's no further questions or comments, I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve $3,900 for Civic Plus and authorize Mayor Tarkington or Manager Sickles to execute the acceptance document.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
This is a 4-year contract?
It's $3,900 for the first year, the second year, and the third year, each $3,900. And the fourth year is $4,000, let me just find it. $4,095.
Do you want to revise that because it's a 4-year, right, contract?
That's correct.
So,
Revise the motion?
yeah,
To accept okay.
because the price changes too.
Kel, was that you?
Yeah.
Just to include the 4 years, 4-year contract?
To include the 4-year contract.
Second?
All right, any further questions or comments? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
Moving on to crack seal placement 2022. Jeremy.
So I presented you my one and only bid for crack seal. We started soliciting pricing from asphalt management companies about mid-January through February. Had one contractor come back with no interest, and then really no luck with responses except for one company, B&M Services. So basically I'm asking, requesting that you would allow us to award the crack seal to B&M Services for $4.72 a pound, not to exceed the budgeted amount of $40,000. This $4.72 a pound, you will see that that's an increase from 2020 when we did our crack seal, but that's due to some of the resins, oil prices, and material costs that you're seeing that increase from.
And what was it originally?
What was that?
What was it originally 2 years ago?
And 2 years ago, it was $2.17, and PAP did that.
Ouch.
Yeah, I know. So I actually called and priced the material out, and this pricing per pound in here, according to the material, is within reason. It's not an unreasonable price.
That's a bummer. That's crazy.
So
Would you estimate that with the, we budgeted a set amount that may have been
Based off that
based
$2?
off that original price, will there be enough material to actually do the crack seals that we need or do we need to up the amount in order for that to make so that we have enough
I think that
material, or you think we have enough?
the dollar amount will be sufficient. We've been doing asphalt management annually. Last year, it kind of fell through the cracks with COVID, but I think what we'll do is just keep the dollar amount the same. We can scale the project back, and then we'll just move those priority streets the following year when we do this annual maintenance. Would be my suggestion.
Jeremy, may I ask a question? So in the statement of work, it says the 2020 street crack seal project in the schedule, and then it has a list of all the places. Are these the same places where we'd be doing the crack seal project for 2022?
On the map or the road?
It's listed 1 through 49.
Oh, yeah,
With
that might be a
472.
typo on my
Okay,
part.
no, no,
For
okay,
2023, those would be the same road list, and those are priorities next to those streets.
Okay.
So typically, we'll start with the highest collector streets that we have with the most traffic, and then we'll work our way down to the secondary streets.
Okay.
And those will rotate over time if we can't get through all of the pavement in town.
Okay. And so all of the locations on this list are town property, town streets, and town
That's correct.
paths? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeremy?
Yes. Not to sound self-serving, but I noticed that Los Pinos Drive is not on the list. Can we assume that that is going to be repaved next year, and that's why it's not getting crack seal this year?
Yeah, and you'll notice there's a section of Tamarack as well, where the street is extremely alligatored. And so what we try and do is avoid those portions because they'll need a complete reconstruction. So basically, we'd be throwing away any material we'd used to keep the moisture out on a severely, I guess, antiquated street. So repaving would
That
be the next
describes it
best
pretty
thing for
well,
the
yeah.
Los Pinos. And that portion of Tamarack that goes from Palo Verde up towards the middle tanks, that road we also skip. It'd be all rubber if we tried to crack seal it.
Yeah, no, that's, I guess, my assumption is that next year it will be fixed as repaved.
Correct, correct.
Thank you.
Well, let's just verify that's basically on the budget that's approved for 2020.
But it's on the list.
It's on
It's on the list.
That's all I want. I just want it on the list.
Los Pinos is identified as a reconstruction.
Thank you.
Is that better?
It looks like Fox Farm has a little part of it too. Is that the same kind of?
Yeah, there's about 50 feet of Fox Farm that the town's responsible for. And on the other side, coming off of Mesa, we own probably 70 feet,
No,
60,
it's more
70
than
feet
that.
right
It
in there.
goes all the way to,
That entrance of
it
Beep right
goes
there.
clear past the entrance of Fox, or the school. I know exactly where it is, believe me.
Right there by that the PRV. Yeah,
I
there's
know
a portion
exactly
of
where
that
it
too.
is. I've had too many discussions about that way over the years. I've got a whole subdivision drawn that's supposed to fit there.
Any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve the crack seal placement 2022 with a not to exceed $40,000 and $4.72 per pound.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes,
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, at this time, I will close the regular meeting and open the public hearings. Keep in mind that we have 3 tonight. We will have staff presentations for each one, applicant presentations, time for public input, and we'll follow through with the answers from either staff or the applicant. I really want to keep everybody in line. We have to stop this back and forth because it's not getting correctly posted to public record. So I'm asking you to ask your questions. We'll try to get those questions written down, and we will address those questions. So we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing for 2022-03 Marlin Village PUD sketch plan.
So good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the board, Nicole Killian, Community Development Director. And I will be going through all 3 of those with you tonight. So the first one is the Marlin Village PUD sketch plan. See if this works for me tonight. So this is located just west of here. just west of the river as well. Just to kind of orient you to the planning process that it's gone through, this project did go through a comprehensive plan amendment in April of 2021, and then it was annexed into the town in December of 21. They're currently in their sketch plan process. Because it's a plan unit development, they do have a 3-step process, and that's sketch, preliminary, and final. And so right now they're at sketch, and they have submitted and hope to be in front of you in April for their preliminary plan. Just to give you a little comparison between a sketch plan and a preliminary plan. So at the sketch plan, we really are looking at a feasibility review to determine if that site works for their proposal. And then when we get to the preliminary plan is where we get into a lot more of the technical documents. So we look at traffic, we look at geotech, we look at their road plans. They will have 2 access points, so we'll be working with them and the county to get permits for access. And so all of that happens really at that preliminary plan stage, and then the final plan stage is where we wrap everything up. So I would say for a sketch plan, though, they did provide a lot more detail than we normally would see for a sketch plan. So that's why your packet does have some of the preliminary plan information has been provided at the sketch plan level. So the project, they're proposing a 15-space tiny home on Wills Village. The property will remain under the current ownership. And so the tiny houses will actually be owner occupied. So the owners of the tiny houses will occupy them, but they will be renting space from the property owner. They're looking at approximately 40 feet by 25 feet for the spaces. They are looking at covered storage so that you don't see a lot of storage around the tiny homes, as well as skirting around the tiny homes. They'll have 2 parking spaces for each unit, as well as 5 additional guest spaces. They're going to xeriscape the property with some shade and fruit trees. They're going to provide a roughly 1,000 square foot community garden, and they also want to provide a pavilion and tables and grills for the residents. So this is just a site plan of what the tiny home village looks like. You can see the spaces lined up on the plan. And then this is just a 3D rendering of what those tiny homes could look like on the property. And I just wanted to point out too, because they do have a lot of topography on the east side of the property, as well as the floodplain for the Los Pinos River, they are keeping the tiny home village pretty much on half of the property, and then the lower half they're not proposing to touch as part of this. So there are 3 possible action motions for the Board of Trustees, and then the Planning Commission did recommend approval at their March 8th meeting for the tiny home village. I can answer any questions that you have as staff, and then the applicant is also present if you have questions of them.
Does the board have any questions for Nicole?
When they say xeriscape, are they talking about the areas, like you've got that picture with a fence around it? Are they talking about inside that fence area that they're xeriscaping?
I'll let them answer that, because at the preliminary plan
Okay.
stage is when we're going to get more into that landscape review, so I don't have the answer to exactly what
Gotcha.
areas yet.
Well, you mentioned it, so I was
Yeah,
was
that's
asking.
their proposal, yeah. I haven't gotten into that much detail yet in my review.
Yeah, I do have a question, maybe the applicant can answer it. I have in my mind what xeriscape is, but I think everybody has a little different idea. In this case, what exactly does that consist of?
So I will let them answer that, but usually xeriscape is more of a native, drought-tolerant landscaping, or rocks or different types of ground cover. And in this case, they said they're going to put in some trees, shade trees as well as fruit trees. But in terms of specifics, I don't know if they'd be prepared, but I'll have them answer the specifics of that.
Okay, and maybe it's premature at the sketch plan to ask that.
So they do have to provide a landscape plan at the preliminary. We just got their submittal on Friday, so I haven't gotten through all of the review yet, but they should have a landscape plan as part of that, and
Okay,
I'll know more.
In the interest of time, we can wait for the preliminary plan.
Okay.
And by the way, I won't be here.
They might have that answer, but yeah. They will be back
Can we ask that in the future, that whatever sketch plan or map that's provided to us is a little more legible? Because you can't read anything on it,
Yeah, and that's probably just putting it into the packet.
I'm
but,
sure. Like
yeah.
if we could have it separate or something,
Yeah.
that way we can see what it is, because honestly, I can't really make heads or tails of
Sure.
what it says.
So in that question, if you have any question or would like to see more copies, keep in mind there's 430 pages in this packet. You may just contact us beforehand and we'll be more than happy to provide paper copies of whatever pages you would like.
You're on the shortened version. So we'll go ahead and let the applicant step forward and.
Good evening, Steve Pavlik. I'm with PST Engineering, 3520 Bennett Street, Durango. I'm the civil engineering consultant on the project. As far as your questions about xeriscaping, we haven't really gotten that far, but I have talked to the owners, Mark and Linda, and it would be plants like things like yarrow and Russian sage and yucca and those sorts of plants that wouldn't really need too much supplemental water, except maybe in the beginning to get them started.
Okay.
And the specific areas, it would kind of be, much of the site is gravel, and that's just kind of a nature of the tiny homes. They need to be able to be moved in and out of there. And between that and the parking, a fair amount will be gravel. But there will be areas where there will be some landscaping, and we had showed that on the preliminary plan. But kind of near the entrances, both entrances, we're proposing some xeriscaping. And then there's a few spots. There's a amenity area with like a pavilion, so there's some trees and landscaping back there as well. And we don't have a formal presentation. We knew Nicole was going to cover most of the basics, so I'm happy to answer any other questions. And Mark and Linda are here as well if there's any questions that I can't answer.
Well, I do have a question, but I imagine that Mark and Lynn are gonna have to answer it, because it goes to intent. As to owner, when you, are leasing out spots, is the intent to have owner-occupied spaces? So that you wouldn't have somebody buying a mini home and then putting it out, leasing from the heads, and then leasing it out to somebody else, so that there's a little bit of insulation
She said
between
they
the
were
landlord
owner-occupied.
and the tenant.
In my conversations with them, and I'll verify, let Mark verify, but yeah, they would not be available for rent to others, and there would be no vacation rentals or anything of that sort. So it would only be the specific owners of the tiny homes would have agreements with Mark and Linda, and they would need to be owner occupied.
Thank you.
Yeah, in their narrative they provided to the town, it did say they would not allow for subleasing of the spaces, so the units do need to be owner occupied.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I do have a question, and I don't know how to phrase it really. So if they want these for tiny homes now. If somebody came in with like an odd tiny home or an RV homemade, because I mean all tiny homes are homemade. Does it have to be like a manufactured built tiny home? Can it be a homemade home? Like, what are going to be the standards on the kind of tiny home that can come in? Would be my.
Sure. I worked on a tiny home project in Durango near the Home Depot, and I know that was kind of the first tiny home project in the area. And basically, at that tiny home project, the tiny homes had to meet the standards of the building department.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that could be done in one of two ways. Either they could be constructed under the supervision of the La Plata County Building Department or the city of Durango, or I think they ended up adopting a standard, like a nationwide standard. And basically, if it was built and certified that it was met those standards, the county and the city of Durango were willing to accept that. So I would assume that something similar would be established in Bayfield, but that may be a question for your building department, honestly.
Yeah, and I can answer that a little bit. We have been discussing that with our building inspector, and we are reaching out to Durango because they do, as Steve said, they do have some nationwide standards, but some of the homes come with like a HUD. It's similar to a manufactured home, so you can get a sticker that says it has been, really what we want to know is, has it been inspected and meets life safety requirements. And so otherwise, some could be built where we have a certain level of inspections that occur, whether we depend on the county, if it's built in the county or in the town of Bayfield. So there's different ways we can look at it, but we're looking into, because we do have our first one coming in, into what those standards are. And if it's something that we need to supplement our building code with, we may be back in front of you soon to look at, into supplementing that. But our building inspector that we have on contract is doing some of that research for us.
Thank you.
My organization that I work for does financing for tiny homes, and one of our requirements is that they are titled as well. So I'd like to see them be titled, just for them to know.
That's a good idea.
Because we don't want them just built from and not being registered.
And I know Durango's building department is, they actually do give them what they would give mobile home, manufactured home certificate of occupancy. So it's different than a stick-built certificate of occupancy that they do issue, the ones at the tiny home village that Steve's talking about.
Very good. We'd like to see stuff like that.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll open it up for public input. If anybody would like to ask questions or make comments. All right, seeing none, do we have any other input from the board?
Would the bus stop here if there were students who lived in the neighborhood?
I would
What do you
assume
mean?
so, yes.
Oh, in there?
Yeah.
I'm sure
I think they
we're,
already stop, actually, right? At that pink house that's on the corner?
Yes.
They
I
do.
think that's a stop right there. Yeah, so it would be right across the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We can move on to our second public hearing with the 2022-01 Orchard PUD preliminary plan.
So this project is also a plan unit development. They've chosen to do a planned unit development because you can negotiate standards, and they wanted to do something a little bit more unique for Bayfield that doesn't meet our current code. So they're looking at doing a private street interior to this property, as well as some limited setbacks that are a little different than our current code. And so that's why they're in front of you for planning and development. You'll see as part of the packet, we did include a plan unit development guide agreement that we've been working with them and their attorney on to make sure, because they don't meet our zoning, they are asking for negotiated zoning and setbacks. This guide would be recorded and actually be their zoning setbacks document that goes with the land. So anytime someone pulls a building permit there, we can refer to this document and how we approved their building permit versus referring to our current zoning. So that's why this one's a little bit different as well. So for their planning process, they did a sketch plan. So this was already in the town limits. So they just had a 3-step process for their plan unit development. So they did a sketch plan in October. They're in front of you tonight for their preliminary plan, and then they do have a final plan process, which does come back to the Board of Trustees for final approval. Preliminary versus final, again, preliminary is where we get more of that technical review, so that's the things that we've been working on with them. You'll see I did provide some conditions. I will say, for instance, geotech, the geotech company that mainly does all of our residential geotech in the whole region is behind because they're the only ones that do that, and construction's so busy. And so we're trying to work with developers. We cannot issue any building permits without a geotech report. They have referred to the Clover 7 geotech report, but they do need to provide their own, and that's occurring in April. So instead of that occurring at the preliminary, I reviewed the Clover 7, which again you would think is similar, but we do need a final geotech report before we give their final approval. So you'd see there's some conditions that I created as part of an approval so that they can keep moving through the process knowing that they'll need to get all of those documents together and finalized before we give final approval for the project. But But the final plan that'll come back before you would be their final plat, final document. So again, that PUD, they also have to do a subdivision improvement agreement, which outlines their public improvements that will be required, and some sort of surety, whether that's a bond or a letter of credit, that we get in place for them, for us to make sure that we do get those public improvements installed. So there's a little bit more technical stuff that will come back through that final plan process when they come before you. This project is a 14-unit plan development. So they'll have 9 single-family lots and 5 townhomes. So the townhomes also are a little bit different process because you have to put in foundation and walls before you can actually plat those. Townhomes do get platted lots, but they have to have some level of construction. So that's an as-built plat that would come back before you when they're ready to plat those for individual ownership. And then, so you won't see that on their current plat. Their unit sizes will range from 1,100 to 1,500 square feet. Again, they're proposing a private road, so that doesn't need to meet the 60-foot right-of-way standards that the town currently has. Really, their private road just needs to make sure it meets emergency standards, so especially for Upper Pine. They will need some sort of a homeowners association, and they will have to have responsibility over the private road maintenance, the drainage and detention areas, the 4 guest parking spaces, and any common areas. And so this is just a sketch, a concept of what they're proposing to do. And this is the current plat that is in front of you for consideration tonight. And Tract A, just to point out, that's going to be their detention area. One thing that at the Planning Commission we had this discussion is originally they did not show plans to do a sidewalk around the development. Let me go back a slide. So on Clover and Orchard, they were not showing sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Our code does require that. They had originally argued that there's a section of lupine, between lupine and this property. If I can see that here, probably not. So that section between lupine and this property along Clover was not, a sidewalk was not installed. I do not know why that piece was not installed, but the rest of lupine, the new Clover 7, Mesa Meadows all have sidewalks, and Clover from lupine all the way south to Louisiana, where it dead ends, or T intersection, has sidewalk on that east side. And so we are asking them, as per our code, to install sidewalk along Clover and Orchard. And then also the Clover 7 that's going to come up and tie into this project is also going to be required to put sidewalks. So you'll still have a continuous sidewalk area. I think after the Planning Commission, they have determined that they're okay putting in that sidewalk. But that's what this discussion was about, in case the board wants to talk about the sidewalks as well. Talking with Jeremy and Katie, the town will be coming back in and putting in that piece of sidewalk that's missing between Lupine and their new sidewalks. And then again, the Planning Commission did hear this item and did recommend approval with the conditions that are in the staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have as staff. And then I know the applicant does have a presentation as well.
Can I just interrupt for a minute? From what I understand, Andrew is trying to get into Zoom, and we may have 2 different Andrews.
Okay. I don't see anybody trying to get in. So that, Ian, this Andrew's not our Andrew?
No,
Oh, there he is. I
two
see him now.
We're waiting for the engineer and
Okay.
trying to get in, but I don't.
I see him now.
Okay.
All right. So do you have any questions of staff, or should I get the?
I think I do, actually,
Okay.
if it's okay. Where you said Tract A is where the detention pond is, and that's leading up into someone's backyard, so there's no possibility of that drainage somehow ending up in flooding someone's backyard, is there? I mean,
So-
it looks like it's right up against a fence.
Couple things. We are investigating the drainage. I'm gonna open up our GIS real quick, so I'm gonna stop sharing this and share the county GIS. And then I might have Jeremy fill in where I need some help, but I'll kind of start this discussion. So the Clover Meadows subdivision, let me share the screen because people on Zoom can't see that. All right. So Clover Meadows subdivision was platted with drainage easements between each lot, and they were swells. So at the lot lines, the properties would drain, and then they also provided drainage from the streets coming down some of those lots, and eventually they would drain into the detention basin at the new Clover 7 subdivision. So that's how that side is supposed to drain, and then there's a detention basin here where you get to the high point on Meadow Circle, and that area is supposed to drain into that detention basin. So there are easements in place that are dedicated for storm drain. We have run into some issues now where we've seen some of the neighbors, instead of having a swell, have actually put in pipe without any approvals to put the drainage underground, and now we're questioning, and this is something that is just kind of very recent, but we are questioning the size of the pipes that were put in because they were not engineered to determine if they actually do meet the requirements of the drainage report that was done for the Clover Meadows subdivision. So I don't know if Jeremy wants to, did I cover that? Do you want to add anything?
That pretty much covers it, unless you guys have some questions.
So we're investigating that. We still have the final plan with them that we'll be working. The applicants, we did give them a heads up that there might be some drainage questions, but we haven't gotten into these details because this is stuff we're just finding out. And just, we need to do some determinations to see if those, what some of those neighbors have done will accommodate what was anticipated for this development.
So where would the
Right.
drainage for this property, can you give me an idea?
Yeah, so,
And we're only seeing
that bottom-
that
okay.
one.
Bottom corner.
oh,
Yeah, it didn't
So
change
is
over.
that drainage gonna be like a little swell? I mean, what is it gonna be, like a little pool?
I'll stand up because.
Yeah, she actually showed me on a different,
Yeah, so their drainage is right in here, and then, so the way it works, and again, they have an engineer, I'm not an engineer, so I'll give you like big picture, and then the engineer can give you the details, but the way the drainage works is they do have to accommodate for, right now they have a vacant land, and so they're gonna put in permeable, non-permeable surfaces, like driveways, homes, and so they have to accommodate for those new non-permeable surfaces in this detention basin. And then what's gonna happen is, it's allowed to be released at the historic level. So it would be allowed to be released at the same rate that you would have a vacant property release their storm drainage. And so vacant property, a lot of that will go into the soil, and you won't have as much runoff as you would when you start adding hard surfaces. But, so they, again, I'll let their engineer kind of get to that detail, but it's supposed to come through here, and again, there's some drainage easements within these properties that eventually will get to the Clover 7 detention. And so we just need to make sure that any improvements that someone's done on their properties can still make sure the flows are adequate so that we don't see any issues on the property. But again, if Andrew, or actually Ian might want to do his presentation, and then I know Andrew's, his engineers here in case there's any more like detailed questions on engineering.
In your look at what homeowners have installed, I mean, is it like 8-inch pipe or 12-inch pipe, or you
I don't know if
haven't?
we have.
Have you got any idea? Can you speak to that at all?
So, yeah, we were actually over there this morning with the town engineer, and we were looking, and it appears to be an 8-inch pipe that's coming off of one of the properties there, and I believe that there's another property before it gets down to the large detention basin per design of that subdivision. So we actually went, confirmed the pipe sizes, and we have SGM looking into it to see what that capacity of those may be. And so they'll be getting back with some more solid details on there. But as of now, I think there's 2 sections that are currently piped for that drain swell with 8-inch piping, and we don't know what the capacity is at this time.
Is the entire length piped? I know that, I know that at the very beginning and the very end, I've seen the pipes. In between, is it piped or is it swale?
No, those swales are still open, and it's for, from what Nicole has provided previously when we were looking at the drainage, that's per design of that subdivision, those drainage swales that went in.
Right.
So I think really what we're determining, and I don't know if it actually impacts Orchard subdivision, is if those drainage swales have been restricted in any way to not allow that stormwater to drain appropriately. And we have SGM looking at that right now. We can get you some better information here by the next meeting for sure.
Thank you.
Was the pipe installed by the developer or by homeowners?
By the homeowners.
Okay.
So they probably had, a divot in their yard or some unusable portion, so they decided that they would flatten it out and use that other additional part of their yard that they have fenced, typically not knowing that it was in a drainage easement, that fence was crossing. And so.
I'm just concerned about the size because 8 inches is awfully small given the area above that.
Yeah, and we did confirm today there's 2 locations that there is 8-inch pipe installed.
How wide is the easement?
15 feet, I believe, from what we reviewed yesterday.
15 feet to 8 inches?
Yeah.
Just an FYI, the fellow who put the pipe in the 8-inch pipe back whenever we had that major storm here in September 8 years ago, 6 years ago, whenever that was, his backyard flooded to knee deep. And that was what prompted him to put the pipe in. Now, I have no idea how he sized that, why he decided on an 8-inch. But there was a pretty major runoff into his yard from that other property, the orchard property.
And we've had one other complaint previously from a different homeowner there that has property in that drainage swale from some of that backing up as well too. So like I said, we'll need to get SGM to give us some more of those calculations and determine what that size is to meet those flows that are coming off from the master drainage plan SMA created in 2014.
While we're talking about our detention pond there, the one that gets down in front of Clover 7, I just want to make certain that we have a nice, great big flat spot there. I'd sure like to see somebody plant some grass or something on there so that doesn't become a weed patch. And I don't care who plants the grass on it, whether it's the developers or the town, but it needs to be done. And somehow or another after that, it will need to be mowed from time to time. And this is typical of drainage detention ponds in larger cities. You'll see them turned into park areas. And then when you do have a rain event, they serve their purpose and soak up the excess moisture.
What section are you talking about?
Right here. I mean, this great big area right here.
Oh, okay.
No, I agree with you, Trustee Black.
Any other questions, comments?
Nope.
Nicole, okay, we can move on to the.
More, did we talk about where snow removal was gonna go? I know we brought that up at one point, and it was a move to the next planning cycle, and I don't know if it's this one or the next one.
I think the applicant can
Yeah,
probably.
and their proposal is to put it where that detention, the pond is too.
Okay.
Okay, now we're ready for you.
Come on up.
My name's Ian Bearclaw. I live at 35 Astor Lane in Durango. I'm the developer, and I'll be building the homes as well. And on the Zoom call, we have the engineer, the civil engineer, Andrew Rapico, who did who can get into more of the specifics on the drainage calculations as well. So Nicole hit most of the highlights, so I'll just cover a couple quick things. This is a site, it's tucked right in there behind the Bayfield Industrial Park. The property was originally zoned as multifamily, which allowed up to 22 units per acre. We're proposing 14 units, and we're going to do a mixture of single-family homes and townhomes. So this is within current zoning. When we talk about why we went with the POD, it was primarily to get a few setback arrangements, because the Planning Commission told us they don't like variances. So we could have pursued this plan through a variance process, but we decided to do it this way because it seemed like the most simple and straightforward way to do it. Again, most of the homes are going to be relatively small. This is what my company typically builds. We've been building in Durango in 3 or 4 different subdivisions, and we've always built, sub 1,600 square foot homes. Most of our homes sell at the more affordable ranges, and these, by de facto townhomes and very small lots, they will be focused on that more affordable price point. This is an old sketch, one of the first ones. We're getting our architecture further developed here right now, but this is kind of gives a good overview of what those houses and the 5 townhomes, where they'll sit on those lots. But you can't see, this is a better map. There you can see Tract A down in the southeast corner. And that space is about 19 by 100, so it's not super small, but we will be able to get a piece of equipment back there, or the association will be able to get a piece of equipment back there for further maintenance, should it fill up in later years. And lot 1, that's fine. This is kind of a good representation of what the homes will look like. This is obviously a different project, but this is kind of what we're modeling our project off of. It's 2-story, pretty shotgun style homes. They'll have attached garages, long and skinny, kind of squeezed on there. Kind of a bank of townhomes, in relation to the single family homes as well. This is a preliminary rendering. We're going to kind of stick with pretty simple architectural details, nothing too fancy, farmhouse, kind of mountainy style homes. This sort of dense housing in kind of modern planning terms is what they call the missing middle. So you've got to the north, you've got the Bayfield Industrial Park, and then we're going to have a denser chunk of houses kind of provide a buffer before you move south into the more standard 1/4 acre or 1/5 acre lots of single-family homes of Mesa Meadows and Clover Meadows. Again, this is fully infill. This is a vacant lot in the city limit or town limits. And our market, we're really kind of trying to target younger families. These are going to be kind of starter homes, people that might not be able to afford some of the larger homes, and I think everybody knows right now that's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. So I think this will be a great product for Bayfield and provide a little bit more of a varied style of housing, as well as maybe a lower price point. So the considerations on the planning front, we think our project kind of checks all the boxes from the comp plan standpoint, variety, mix of housing types, and falls right in line with what the zoning was, and is in fact less dense than it could be. Infrastructure, we're only proposing 2 improvements that will be granted to the town. That'll be the sidewalks, that'll be in the public right of way, and then the sewer line that we have to run through the road in the property, but the water's all coming through easements off of Orchard and Clover, running through backyards. So there will be no water mains for the town to maintain on this property, as well as the road. The road will be private. And traffic, we're anticipating that it'll generate about 9 trips for the peak hour. It's going to be roughly what the Bayfield Industrial Park generates already. So not a huge increase in traffic, and it is about half of what could occur if it was built to full density there. So yes, of course, there will be traffic increases, but we think it'll be within the realm of tolerability. Again, it fits within all the comp plan recommendations here. And lastly, just again, kind of showing what the product will look like. So I'm anticipating some drainage questions, and Andrew's on the line here.
Can you explain why so you said we're not going the variance route, we're doing this PUD. Why do we need different setbacks, and like why do we need a reduction in the town's code with their regular setbacks?
Because it's a small site, and we wanted to put in some single-family homes, and to get them, we're going for 8-foot setbacks, or 8 foot between the houses instead of 10 feet, so it's not a huge reduction. But just to make kind of livable single-family homes without making them too skinny, just given the size constraints of the property.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, can I ask a question? All right. You'd stated earlier with regards to sidewalks that there was agreement to place sidewalks in the public right of way, which we heard Ms. Killian state appears to be Clover Drive and Orchard.
Yep.
And that's the plan. And is there no plan for sidewalks within the subdivision?
No, just a
private road?
A private road, yep. With drainage, kind of swales on the sides.
Just wanted that clarification.
When you say drainage swales on the sides, that can do a lot. You can make that a lot of different things. Is it going to be a drainage swale that is going to be put in like a concrete pan that'll help? And I'm really asking you to do this, to put in a concrete pan to drain things, to retain the asphalt. Otherwise, the asphalt likes to go wherever it goes. And all you have to do is look at Clover or look at Bayfield Center, any place where we haven't retained the asphalt with sidewalk, it likes to move. So I would like to see that as a condition of approval.
This is a private road, so the town will not have maintenance concerns with it. This will be maintained by the
I'm
HOA.
just saying that, this is a consideration for your buyers.
And we have an HOA in place that will put into capital improvements funds for that. As of right now, we don't
well,
have it designed with a concrete pan.
I would think that would be a good thing to do, because it, like I said, it holds the asphalt in place, and it gives you a defined area where your drainage swale is, because otherwise they have a tendency to move.
I'm okay with the HOA taking care of that.
Can I ask a question? And this has to do with the retention pond, and from page 89 in our packet, 89 to 95, you have graphs and charts, and all of which I can read and not understand. It just is beyond me, because I'm not an engineer. So I guess I need to ask the question that I probably are answered in the graphs, but I need to ask it anyway. When you talk in your report about the impervious area of the project being increasing from 2% to 52%, and then you talk about accommodating historic runoffs, how that in my mind doesn't compute, because if you have historic runoffs, they're with permeable areas, not impervious areas. So how do you account for historic runoff in terms of a 52% increase, if that question is understandable?
It is, and I'll cover it quickly, and maybe the engineer can provide more detail. Yeah. But that tract A is a retention pond with an outflow structure, so it's meant to catch that water, slow it down, hold it, and then only release at a calculated level correlated with historic flows. So maybe the engineer can provide a little better explanation.
We can hope.
Are you there, Andrew?
Yeah, sure. I'm just waiting for about to be asked a direct question. So yeah, I think you stated it well, and so did Nicole. The fundamental infrastructure that we're putting in related to drainage is the detention pond, which attenuates that, difference in runoff from as it sits today to a fully developed site with the roads, the buildings, all the impervious areas. And we certainly have to take some assumptions on how much impervious area we're dealing with. That's I think you stated it well, and that is the whole reason for that small concrete box in the detention pond. That is what released this runoff, at a designed and calculated, engineered rate, so to speak. And looking at, reviewing the report prior to this meeting, we're actually attenuating runoff in theory, to below historic levels. That's just, we were able to do that and saw that as a benefit. And we could fit that amount of detention in that corner. And I think, that's, speaking of the issues in the existing subdivision, I'm not aware of what infrastructure's been installed, but I think we're, improving that situation by attenuating runoff, to a rate that's actually lower than the calculated historic rate.
Okay, so you sized the pond to accommodate the 52% increase over but based on historic rates? I mean, if you had a historic rate based on, say it's going from 2% to 52%, you have a 50% increase, but you're still calculating based on historic rates. So you accommodated that increase in the pond, the size of the pond?
That's exactly how it's sized. And that's the engineering that goes into it. Right? We look at those developed conditions and design a detention pond, to attenuate runoff and release it at historic rates, at the rates of runoff that would have, been there had the development not taken place, right? So, and I'll, another interesting note. I mean, these soils produce a very high runoff rate all through this area of Bayfield. It's classified as a type D soil. So I don't have it in front of me, but I think the historic rate was around 2 CFS. That's what would have been released from that 1 acre, in its native condition, with native vegetation, native grading. We're dropping that to around 1 CFS through the design of our detention structure. So that 3,000 cubic foot pond holds the water, releases it at a controlled rate, less than the historic rate. That's how the design fundamentally works.
What is that 1 CFS release rate based on as far as a rainfall rate or?
That's all based on, that's the 100-year event, is what I'm talking about. That's
Okay.
what we usually design these detention facilities for.
All right.
So, 100-year storm, which I don't know if this basin has seen one. That's a theoretical rainfall effect. So that is the 100-year release. I could, if you want me to peel out some of the information from the drainage report and give you some information on more regular rainstorms, like the 2-year event is one you would see in theory every 2 years. And that's all based on City of Bayfield, rainfall data, which is in their design criteria and technical specifications for drainage. So that was all applied to this analysis. So that pond will not fill up in theory unless the 100-year event takes place. And that is, I think, around 3 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, something like that.
Well, a term that you use in here that I'm not familiar with, you say the EDP provides 1 foot of freeboard. What is freeboard?
that means the pond will not spill, that it has there's a berm around the pond. That provides 1 foot of, so the berm around the pond would be exposed by 1 foot in the event the 100-year storm takes place.
The 1 foot is above maximum capacity. I mean, above maximum of what you think's gonna go in there.
Capacity is not include freeboard. Freeboard is
Yeah.
in excess of that.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you. We'll go ahead and
Thank you.
open up for public input. If anybody would like to ask questions, you know the drill.
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. The retention or detention pond drainage issue obviously is going to be looked at, but it appears to me that if there is a flood situation and that water does run off into the neighborhood through a pipe that's been put in by the residents, my question is to the developer is who would pay for that, or who is going to pay for the improvement from the Orchard PUD to Clover 7? That could be ugly, it seems like. That's quite a ways down from their development to Clover 7 detention pond. And I have seen detention pond on Clover 7 fill up. So it does happen, and we haven't had massive rains in a long time. But this is developed in case we do. But my question is, who's going to pay for if they need to redo that from the PUD Orchard into Clover 7? The other thing, I'd like trustees to hold firm on the sidewalks. It sounds like they've agreed to that. That's a good thing, because my feeling was if you didn't, that the next development would ask for the waiver as well, or the negotiation on not putting in sidewalks, because their argument was it doesn't connect to anything. We have got to get to connecting things so that we don't have an argument from a developer that there is no connection and why should I do it. The other thing is the setbacks. I would try to hold firm on that if you can. I know that they need to squeeze in as much as they can to make it affordable. I applaud them for that. But again, if you do it for this one, you're going to open yourself up for the next one as well. So at some point, you've got to hold firm on what our comp plan and what our planning commission states, our PUC and LUC, on guidelines. So thank you very much.
All right, do we have any other public input? Yes, please.
My name is Heidi Hawley. I live at 2179 County Road 526. Was that right? They said that the subdivision is 1 acre in volume, and for that they've got a 3,000 cubic foot retention pond for that 1 acre?
It was 1,000, I believe.
What?
Wasn't it 1,000?
If
I thought I
Andrew
heard
can,
3.
Andrew, can you answer that?
I thought there was 3,000 cubic feet per acre
Yeah, it's a 3,000 cubic foot detention facility.
for the 1 acre
So that
subdivision.
For the entire project, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We've come up with a drainage plan that routes all runoff to that detention facility.
That was my question, thank you.
And I wanted to answer Mr. Blanchard's question about, in the future, who would maintain this basin and make sure that it's working properly, and that would be the responsibility of the HOA. We do recognize that some of our HOAs might not be maintaining their basins, and so we're going to be starting a process of reaching out and making sure that we are touching base with the HOAs to make sure that other basins in the community are being maintained appropriately. But it would be the HOA's responsibility.
Well, let me ask you how that works, because I know that there are some places where HOAs have disbanded. That's what I hear anyway.
I live in one of those areas.
How does that work then? There's no HOA then who deals
So
with it?
technically, and we'll be working with our council on this, but technically, it's still the property owner's responsibility that are in that development, whether they have an HOA or not. And so that's something we'll be looking into, and again, working with council to come up with a plan for those that are in that situation and how we want to do that outreach.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I would like to state that there is a chat that Penny Merchant provided. Whether she unmutes herself, it should be on the public record.
Yeah, Penny Merchant's the one who, she stated that her family put in that 8-inch pipe. So we'll be reaching out. She gave us her husband's phone number. So Penny, we'll be reaching out from the city's perspective. But if you had anything else you wanted to add. I don't know if she can, I'll see if you can unmute. But I did write his number down. Are you there, Penny?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I don't know if we have much more to add to it. When we first moved in, they had messed up the ditch on our side. They made it was really steep and instead of that wide. As you see across the street, it's a lot wider. And I think it's because it was so steep in there when they were grading the yard, that's why it was flooding. And so it just, I mean, like half our backyard was deep underwater a few times. So that's when we put in that and covered it up, and it hasn't happened since, but I don't know, that's really all we have. Our old neighbors, they don't live here anymore, but they had wanted that front covered up because they were worried their kids were gonna get hurt in there, so that's why they had put that front part. That's why that part was covered. And that pipe put in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, do we have any other public input?
Brian Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. Since we're on this issue, the engineers have engineered the Orchard PUD detention to flow ultimately to Clover 7. There's also 2 other large projects to the east of Orchard PUD that will probably be coming online here in the near future. They're also going to have the same issue. My question is, do you know if Orchard 7 or Clover 7 detention pond can accommodate not only this one, but probably 2 more to feed into it in the future? Thank you.
Jeremy and I can tag team that maybe, but Mustang Crossing's not proposed to drain into Clover 7's pond. And Mesa Meadows doesn't even flow into Clover 7's pond. Mesa Meadows has 2 of their own ponds. So the Clover 7 pond, when reviewing the drainage plan for the Clover Meadows, was like the industrial area from Bayfield Parkway all the way south to the pond. And then pretty much from Clover Drive to the Ludwig ditch area. It was all kind of part of that drainage area into that Clover 7 pond.
And it's engineered for that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a master drainage plan that accounts for that. And looking at the plans, it appears that the large detention basin you see at Clover 7 was sized appropriately to collect all of that subdivision at full build-outs runoff.
And full build-outs was 22
Hey guys,
units, right?
this is what I'm trying to avoid. If you're not on the microphone, you're not on public record, so please just address the board through the microphone. Do we have any other questions or any other comments from the audience? Does the applicant have any follow-up answers or comments?
No.
Okay. Moving on. We'll move on to our third one of the evening, 2021-12 Bayfield East annexation.
So Bayfield East annexation is on the northeast edge of Bayfield. It's roughly 153 acres in size. In terms of planning process, this went through a comprehensive plan amendment last month. They were in front of Planning Commission, now in front of you for the annexation. And then they too will still have a 3-step process after that. Because this is such a large project, I've been talking with the development team about how they want to maybe break that up, and I don't think there's a definitive answer to that yet, so they have options. They can come in and do a sketch plan for the entire 153 acres, or they can break it up into phases and do a sketch plan for each phase and preliminary and final, and then do that for each phase. So that's up to them on how they want to proceed with coming for the public hearings. But I wanted to point that out. So it could be a longer process, and we might be seeing phases for the coming years on this project. For annexations, we do have to meet state statutes. The annexation area has to be 1/6 contiguous to town limits. We need to be able to service the area. It needs to be located within our 3-mile plan area for the town. They did submit their annexation petition. That was accepted by resolution from the town board in December. There have been public notices for this hearing. They did provide an annexation impact report. And of course, we are now having the hearings, and then the plat ordinance and an annexation agreement do need to be recorded for the finalization. In your packet, we do have the plat, we do have a draft ordinance as well, and also the agreement, the annexation agreement is all part of your packet tonight. This project is 4 separate properties, like I said, 153 acres. They also are looking at a plan unit development. In this case, that gives them some flexibility in use because it is such a large project. So they're looking at commercial uses, mixed use, and different types of residential. And so that plan unit development will give them that flexibility to mix those uses throughout the project area. There are currently 2 existing gas wells on the project site, so we will be working with them through our review process when that time comes. And then as of right now, we know the Los Pinos ditch goes through the property. We have been working with their attorney and have all agreed on a condition for them to continue to work with the Los Pinos Ditch Company. They're proposing 318 single-family lots, 45 townhome units, 156 multifamily units, and 163,000 square feet of commercial. And then, well, let me get through this and then I'll kind of talk about conditions. So on the left-hand side is their proposed concept plan for the 153 acres, and then on the right side is their proposed phasing. So again, we might see this project broken up into the phases, and we may see a sketch, preliminary, and final plan for each phase, or we might see like a larger sketch plan, but they will need to do a preliminary and final for each phase because that's when we get into the detailed engineering. And then I did want to bring up a couple quick things before I wrap up my presentation. We did add a condition from the Planning Commission meeting. We got notified that there may be a Schroeder ditch lateral, and so we did add a condition that they need to investigate that. So that's different from the Planning Commission, that's condition H. And then also, I did want to point out that I did get a phone call from the new Bayfield superintendent who had stated that they are that there may be some capital needs in the future, especially with the development that Bayfield is seeing right now. He said the secondary schools are reaching capacity levels, and so in terms of and I know that I sent him also to the applicant so that they can speak with them as well. And we'll be including him in some future meetings as we start getting into some of these phases. But I just wanted to make sure that was put on the record, that conversation, that when they did the economic impact report, it was with the previous superintendent. And so the information is a little bit different now, and I just wanted to present that to the board as well. So again, the Planning Commission heard this on March 8th and did recommend by motion approval with that addition of condition H. And I can answer any questions that you might have as staff right now, and then I know the applicants do have a presentation as well.
Any questions for Nicole?
I wouldn't mind hearing the presentation first.
Okay.
Let me get theirs. This is the one that crashed me at Planning Commission, so. Fingers crossed.
All right.
Okay, I think we're good.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Arnold. I am an economic development planner that works with SEH. We are the agent for the applicant, the Bayfield East Development. I'm joined here with Philip Rennick, who's our engineer on the project, and also Derek McCoy, who's a representative also of the developers. You can ask us, all three of us, questions tonight if anything comes up, during our presentation or after the fact. What I want to cover is I want to go over the general concept of our conceptual development, how it aligns with Bayfield's comprehensive plan, and we've tried to do that strategically. I want to go over the development concept, dig into the phasing, why we are pushing for a PUD zoning, given the size. And then a majority of this presentation is going to focus on the fiscal impact. One of the major concerns that municipalities have with annexations, especially of this size, is how is this going to impact your budget? And Colorado state statutes also mandate that we look at impacts to the school districts when we do annexations. So I'll dive into those numbers with you.
There's a PDF.
Sorry, Nicole. So Nicole's already gone over this. This is just the actions to date going back to January until last week, where we started with our comp plan amendment. I will talk about why we went for a comp plan amendment on this particular property. And now last week, March 8th, Planning Commission recommended our PD zoning on this annexation, and we're hearing the annexation tonight with you. So our development goals, and you can keep moving. Okay. Thank you, Nicole. These are, when we sat down with the developers and they were thinking about this area, keep in mind this is 153 acres. And so there's a lot of potential with this development. And what we wanted to do were align this conceptual development, the concepts behind it, with specific goals in the comprehensive plan. Three that really stood out that were part of our narrative were, and this is in your plan, Bayfield 2018, enhancing economic development opportunities throughout your town. That's recommendation 3.4. Identifying land for improvement, specifically sales tax, generating uses. And diversifying the housing types. So as you go through this conceptual development plan, I hope you keep in mind those three recommendations because they do form the backbone behind this design. And so our existing conditions. This will be a series of slides starting with your future land use plan. This might be difficult to see, but the four properties in question are highlighted by that light blue and the red. Now the reason I separated those two colors is because the light blue, we didn't ask for any changes on your future land use map. That future land use map is part of your comprehensive plan. It shows medium density residential as well as high density residential as a future land use outside of your existing town limits. However, the red captures that light pink color and then that red color. Now, specifically that light pink, that's a land use category that's light industrial. We are not proposing any light industrial uses for this development, so we needed to amend the comprehensive plan. We also wanted to introduce a mixed use zone, which you have in your future land use plan, but is not part of those four particular properties. So what we wanted to do is keep the general commercial, have that mixed use so that there could be some buffering as you go north towards what the town originally envisioned in 2018 as medium density and higher density residential uses. So these are our existing conditions. The light pink is the current town limits, and so all of that property is within the town of Bayfield. The navy blue is your future growth boundary and all of that property that the town, according to its comprehensive plan, is looking at down the line. And that orange, those are the 4 properties in question that were for you today about this conceptual development and annexing into the town. And so these maps just demonstrate some of the feasibility behind the project. It's really important that when you're annexing, that you know where your existing infrastructure is. This is where present water lines are, according to La Plata County GIS. They're surrounding the property, especially along its western edge. And same here with existing sewer lines. You can see them south of the property across Highway 160 and also to the west of the property. According to La Plata County GIS, this map is showing you where existing irrigation districts are running across, or irrigation ditches are running across the town limits. The one that you see cutting across our southwest boundary is the Los Pinos ditch. We are looking into that Schroeder lateral C that was brought up in the Planning Commission meeting. The Schroeder ditch is actually further west. You can see it over there. All right, so the design, our conceptual development plan. So Nicole actually had a much better slide up where it zoomed in to what we're proposing, but essentially there's 4 parcels that are part of this overarching plan, 153.5 acres. You can see that on the southern end of that first parcel, the one closest to Highway 160, that is where the majority of the commercial space is being located. It's 163,000 square feet of non-residential square footage, the way that we are envisioning it right now. One of the catalyst projects is going to be a grocery store. That does say 2 commercial buildings. That's a typo. When we say commercial buildings, there's multiple commercial buildings that are making up what we would imagine is the 163,000 square feet of residential space. There's also been discussions about bringing a hotel there. It seems to be properly located. And then everything to the north is going to be a mix of residential units. 519 residential units total are what we are imagining, 318 single-family detached homes, 45 townhomes, and 156 multifamily units. Thanks, Nicole. That's just zoomed in so you can get a better look at those commercial uses, where those commercial uses may be located, our proposed street structure and the street network. And I do want to say that, and this came up in the Planning Commission meeting, that this conceptual development is meant to be designed with the land. It is meant to follow the existing contours. Where the roads are being proposed are meant to work with the landscape, and our landscape architects and engineers did walk the site when they were coming up with this plan. Thank you, Nicole. That's just the northern end of the site, showing you all of the residential uses and a possible street layout. You'll notice that there is a lot of green space throughout this layout. And trail networks going throughout this. This is part of the conceptual plan. It's not about just trying to put as many single-family lots as possible here. This is meant to, again, work with the land, work with the drainages, and create a great neighborhood. And so now the phasing. This is really important, and I want to thank Nicole for explaining how this phasing is going to be fluid. When you're dealing with 153 acres and a development of this size, a lot can change. We imagine that this phasing is going to take roughly 10 years. So that's almost a full real estate cycle. So it's difficult to predict what could happen in 10 years, but this is definitely the aim that we're going for. Our initial phases, and this is going to be good when we talk about the fiscal impact, are going to be those commercial uses, phases 1A and 1B, closest to Highway 160. The way that we see this development occurring is starting out around Highway 160 and moving north. And again, it is going to be based upon local absorption rates, market conditions, but as developments come online, as lots sell, we'll be able to continue to work towards those northern phases. The further north you go, the larger the lots are, more single-family homes, which again matters when we're looking at fiscal impacts. I do also want to just highlight real quick that is one of the reasons why we are asking for PUD zoning throughout this entire area. We have a good sense, and we've tried to do as much research as possible of what is possible and what's feasible. But since markets can shift, the PUD zoning allows this development to be flexible enough to work with the town, work with the community, and continue to proceed. So I do want to get back to one of the things that was a comprehensive plan goal, which was diversifying the housing stock. So this pie chart that you see here is the town's current residential mix. Now this is coming from La Plata County's assessor's office, where they have different assessments for different uses all throughout the county. We looked at the town of Bayfield, and you can see that the majority of all of your housing types are going to be single-family homes. It's over 80%. Townhomes are about 9%, and then it's just a very small slivers of different multifamily uses. Those categories are from the assessor: multi 9+, multi 4 through 8, duplex, triplex. That's how the assessor categorizes those housing types. And you can see they're all under 3%, 3.2%, 1.5%. So there's not what I would call a diversified housing mix currently in the town of Bayfield. So what we're proposing for our site, next slide please, or next scroll, is a different type of residential mix. So 61% single family homes is what this would represent. The 9% of townhomes is very much in line with what you currently have in your town. Where this development really kind of changes the game is how much multifamily apartment houses can potentially go into this. This would be a significant increase from what you see currently in Bayfield. We also wanted to look at land uses. And the reason this matters is because of taxes. You might not be aware, but residential land uses don't generate that much in taxes in the state of Colorado compared to commercial land uses. Commercial land uses on average are generating about 4 times the taxable revenue of the same priced residential property. And so that matters when you look at the existing land uses in the town of Bayfield. Commercial uses are only 6.8% when you look at all of the parcels by assessment in the town. Residential, 85%. So the town is heavily skewed towards that residential side of the spectrum. When we look at our development, though, what we're proposing with this conceptual development, and you can scroll to the next slide, please. You can see that it's much more commercial space coming online. Bayfield East is roughly 163,000 square feet. For comparison's sake, the existing square footage of commercial space in the town of Bayfield is only 315,000. And keep in mind that this 163,000 square feet of potential commercial space is meant to occur in the initial phases of this development. So that's going to be a big boost to how much commercial land uses you have in your town, which is also a boost to the commercial sales taxes and the commercial property taxes you're generating. Next slide, please. So, if I haven't put you to sleep already, we'll jump into the fiscal impact analysis. Our estimated demographics, so taking this conceptual development program and looking at what would happen if it got fully built out, what would change with the town. We looked at the current town's population. It's 2,800 people, roughly, according to the state demographer. Our projected Bayfield East population would be 1,395 people. That represents a 49% increase in the town's current population. We also looked at the school district's current population of 1,314 pupil count. Keep in mind that the Bayfield 10 JTR school district does exceed the town limits. There's a lot more people than just coming from the town of Bayfield that go into that pupil count. Our projected Bayfield East students are 197 students. This is what we're looking at for given the households that would be coming online. And this percent increase is about a 15% increase with the school district. We looked at the assessed market value. The way that we did this is we looked at what current assessments were in the town of Bayfield in La Plata County. We looked at development costs per square foot that we're seeing all throughout the county. And we looked at the amount of space that would be coming online. The estimated assessed market value is about $258 million at full build-out. What matters to the town, though, is the equalized assessed value. That's your taxable value of the development, and it's roughly $29 million. The annual town expenditures, so the way that we did this fiscal impact analysis is we looked at the expenses per person in the town of Bayfield, And we also looked at the revenues collected per person in the town of Bayfield. And then we also looked at expenses and revenue per non-residential square foot, because this is a development that has non-residential uses and residential uses. We had to separate them out to look at the impacts individually and then bringing them both together. All told, it's about $2.8 million annually in expenses, $3.2 million annually in revenues, which brings a surplus of $416,000 annually to the town of Bayfield. I want to highlight one thing about fiscal impact analyses. Typically, you want to see them at least break even when you're especially doing annexations. But because of the amount of commercial space and because of how little commercial development and sales tax producing uses Bayfield has, this is why you see a large surplus with this type of development. Property tax. We wanted to look at the annual property tax that this development would be generating. Taking the non-residential property taxes and the residential property taxes together, it's $172,000 annually in property tax. Next slide, please. For comparison's sake, according to your 2022 budget, the town only collected $220,000 of property tax in 2022. So this would be a possible increase in property tax by 78% for the town. We also looked at sales tax. This got a little tricky because we had to figure out what the sales were per square foot based on only retail producing uses. Talking to the town staff, we came up with a number of about $176 per square foot annually. All right, and then you take taxes off of that. When we look at those tax numbers, currently the town is collecting $2,135,000 in annual sales tax. This development would almost be $1 million, representing a 45% increase in sales tax. That's a big deal because of the next slide. When you look at your town's current budget,
You wanted that slide?
I wanted that. When you look at your town's current budget, the red is the sales tax that you're collecting, and the blue is the property tax. So when you think about how you're paying for everything in the town, sales tax is commanding the lion's share. So any use that can generate more sales tax is going to be of a greater benefit than simply the property taxes. And the reason why sales tax is so much bigger than the property tax goes back to what I was saying before. Residential uses don't generate that much in property taxes. Commercial uses generate more in property taxes. The sales tax, though, is really what's paying the bills in the town. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk very quickly about the school district impacts. So we did a similar study regarding the Bayfield School District that we did for the town. Like I said, 197 new students would be generated by this development. That's a 15% increase in the student population. And when speaking to the previous superintendent, we were talking about how that would impact the school. Now, there's something called a total funding formula in the state of Colorado where every new pupil is backfilled by the state. It's roughly on average for the town of Bayfield, $9,200 per new student. The school district has been going down in population since 2010 to what we've seen last year. So the increase is a welcome increase for the school district according to actually both superintendents. And they would imagine that there would be required, at full build out, 197 new students would require new teaching hires, just given the capacities of the classroom. I should note that the new superintendent did want me to state that capital improvements could be required down the line. Initial phasing being commercial, they don't see this in the near term. However, given the amount of development happening in Bayfield, capital improvements could very well be needed in the school district. Next slide, please. And so when we were looking at recurring or annual revenues, it was about $2.7 million. Non-recurring one-time revenues, that's the school district impact fee per house, is $412,000 for this development, bringing the subtotal to $3.1 million and change. The cost, because really the only cost that was agreed upon were the hiring of new teachers. At the moment, it was about 10 new teachers, $60,000 average salary according to the school district salaries, would be about $600,000. So you can see that that net impact is very positive for the school district. $2.5 million annually. I do want to make a quick mention of traffic impacts. So this is a conceptual development plan. An impact study is being completed that is a joint traffic impact study with some of the other developments in the area. The reason it's a joint traffic impact study is because this is what was mandated by CDOT regarding US Highway 160 and regarding the potential for an intersection at US Highway 160 and Bayfield Parkway. That intersection would be the main access point to this development. CDOT is actually having the town of Bayfield submit this joint impact study that would impact, obviously, both of these developments. And then I also wanted to just make a quick note. The majority of the town's capital improvement fund and its streets fund, which are the two funds that are utilized to create new roads, maintain roads, new infrastructure improvements, are almost all of their funding is derived from sales tax. So again, any use that can generate sales tax is going to directly fund the infrastructure funds that this town has. So keep that in mind as you're evaluating this conceptual development plan. So finally, our key takeaways. Like I said before at the start of this, our plan designing this property was to align it with the town of Bayfield's comprehensive plan. It will increase the town's housing stock and diversity of housing types. It will increase commercial and sales tax producing uses for the town of Bayfield, and it will generate a fiscal surplus for both the town and the school district. Those, I believe, are in alignment with the goals that you put forth in 2018. I'm going to wrap up there. Again, you can ask me any questions. We have our engineer with us, and also Derek McCoy, representative for the developers. Thank you for your time.
I'm sure after all the talk you've heard on the other ones, are there sidewalks?
There is, and Nicole, if you wanted to mention anything about the annexation agreement, that's fine as well. We do imagine that there will be sidewalks going throughout this development.
Just making sure.
We basically, this annexation agreement that's going to be signed with this annexation says that on-site infrastructure improvements are the responsibility of the developer. So yes, sidewalks will be present.
And I noticed, it doesn't really say how many townhomes or multifamily homes in the little brown off-white section 1B on your plan.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't say kind of really how many of those they have planned. It just says one big
It was in the
thing of
presentation.
town.
Yeah,
homes.
so
I didn't see it.
I'm sharing some
up
tricks of the
close
trade
enough,
here. So basically, that brown area is where we would imagine that townhome use being located. However, what you see there, where it says multifamily, 170,000 square feet, that doesn't mean that this is going to be a zero lot line, multifamily development. Typically, you're taking 30% of what that lot may or may not be. You have to put in parking, you're going to have obviously drainage, retention, all of these things when you're doing a forecast. And so taking about 30 to 40% of that lot space and looking at your average size of a townhome in the town of Bayfield, that's how we can arrive at the 45 townhomes for that particular space. Same thing with the multifamily units in those spaces. The single family lots, though, they're pretty well depicted.
Yeah, those are easy to understand.
And I'm assuming that the sales tax collection based on square footage of sales or
Of the
commercial.
actual buildings, not the pads.
So does that include sales tax collection from the Wayfair laws per household?
No, so the way that we did sales tax collections or forecasted them is we looked at the way that the town of Bayfield currently collects their sales taxes, which is actually two ways. You get a remittance from La Plata County, and then the other way that you collect sales taxes are actually, it's a direct sales tax that the town has that then gets refunded back through the state of Colorado. So that Wayfair deal is
I was trying to
probably
figure out how you
going to
figured
increase your sales
Okay.
taxes, but the way that we did that, we weren't accounting for online sales.
Okay.
So actually, you are accounting for online sales because that's what we're collecting today.
Because that's rolled into, that's what I was wondering if
Did you collect it in 2021?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well then, yes, then it would be based on a per square footage, because that was the other thing.
Okay.
Is that we did, is we looked at your current commercial space on a per square footage basis and what was being collected by the town of Bayfield. So if there were online sales that were going into your total sales tax collections, yeah, it would be factored into that.
Well, I just think you increase that many households clicking on Amazon, I think that number is a lot higher than.
What I can say is that that $176 per square foot, actually, it's something that we've seen similar throughout when we've done this in
Okay.
Durango and throughout La Plata County. Like downtown Durango is about $256 annually per square foot.
Okay.
You know, so you can start seeing differences in terms of how much spending is going on in those commercial spaces.
I was just wondering how you factored that in. That's a little bit of a curveball.
Yeah. But no, thank you. Appreciate it.
You use a term in there that I don't understand. Page 214, you talk about own source revenues, and that's in the context of that the analysis only evaluated direct impacts and own source revenues within the town. What is own source revenue?
No, that's a really good question. So
Thank
own
you.
source revenues are revenues that the town collects that is based upon your tax structures. So property taxes, sales taxes. When I say own source revenues, one thing we're not looking at is intergovernmental transfers. So revenues that might be, you know, transferred from the state or transferred
Right.
from the county, things like that. We don't want to factor those in on a per person basis. The other thing on a per capita multiplier method that you don't want to do is factor in things like grants. Like that's a one-time allocation of funds. You can't assume that that's going to happen per person every single year.
And does that apply to like where you talk about the water fund PIF is expected to generate a non-recurring revenue of 3.5 million and the park has non-recurring revenue? Are those the grant funds you're talking about?
So when we talk about impact fees as a non-recurring revenue, so when that development gets built, so for instance, the park impact fee or the school impact fee, house comes online, it has to pay that impact fee at the time that it comes online. But that impact fee is a one-time collection. It's not the same as, you know, what it would be paying out in property taxes or collecting in sales taxes. which
Okay,
would be
so
recurring.
in this case, the water fund plan investment fee would be 3.5 million projected.
Projected. So given the amount of taps that would be required, and you look at what your current cost per taps
Right,
are.
and the kind.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you would take that. That's a lump sum. But again, that wouldn't be just a one-time payment in the same sense because PIFs are paid as you make those connections. So again, that would be phased out throughout the development.
Right, but it would be not one time, but non-recurring.
Yeah, non-recurring.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Does the board have any other questions, comments?
Yes.
Yeah, I have one if you're,
Now's the time.
go ahead, Josh.
No, go ahead. I've been
You know,
logging.
talking economic impact, do you have, if your planning timelines go as you project, what kind of a build-out timeline do you see for this project based on current economic conditions that we're experiencing at the moment?
Well, with our initial phasing plan, we talked about phase 1A and 1B taking about 3 years to complete. And so that's really that initial bottom parcel. The remaining phases, and maybe
Do you have the
Maybe
phasing
it's a-
plan on here?
I do, I think it's further down. Sorry. So 1A and 1B, we would imagine being in the ballpark of 3 years. However, 2 through 6, And you'll notice on Nicole's slide 6 even had a question mark because there's only, so many lots that are even included in that phase. We see that taking an additional 7 years, depending upon absorption rates. A lot of this is going to be dependent on how much can get sold, right? How much the market can absorb, because that's also going to factor into the developer's ability to extend this infrastructure north throughout the site. You got to keep in mind that they're extending water lines, sewer lines, and especially the roads. So, it's gonna be a
At the
function of the
outset,
market.
you're just kind of looking at the red, pink area there at the bottom
Yes.
as your initial development area,
Mhm.
working up into the blue and purple as you go along.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You have one?
Yes. Well, I have two, but I know there's some people here this evening to talk about drainage, and they can probably discuss it a lot better than I can, so I'm going to leave it to
They
them.
can discuss it better than I can, too.
Yeah, okay. And that's not going to be my question. My question is, ICAV, who is the owner-operator of the gas wells and the gathering lines that are on the property, they submitted some comments, raised their concerns. Does the applicant understand that, or is the applicant intent on using La Plata County regulations to address those concerns? And do you understand that setbacks apply to gas wells and the gathering lines? And how, have you considered that, and are you going to use the La Plata County regs for that?
Well, I believe it's a condition of approval.
So the condition is that they need to get a review permit from the town.
Right.
I will say by the time they start developing, we may have our own adopted standards that then we would want them to meet, because it is something we are looking into.
Okay, so they would not be grandfathered, because we do not have them now, they would not be grandfathered in under a time when we
Annexation's
don't
not
have them.
grandfathered in. They have to meet current standards when they start doing their development plans.
Okay, so if we don't have those standards, would you then use the La Plata County standards?
I guess I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I would imagine we would use the standards that are applicable to the development at the time that we get there. But I am aware of their comments that they raised, and I do know that we'll have to go through that use permit and have to abide by whatever setbacks are required at that time.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
I think you had a drainage question, maybe for Phil?
Well, we have a public hearing, so I just soon have the folks that are going to be affected by it talk about it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, so I'd like to open it up to public input, and keep in mind, I would like to get all of the questions and comments out first, and then we will go back and address those questions and concerns. So let's go ahead and open that up. And if you have anything to address, please step up to the microphone. And Katie, I got Kristen and Katie on it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Debbie.
How are you doing?
Hi, Josh.
Hey.
I've been in this room with these guys.
Could you please state your name? I'm sorry for that.
Mike Deming, 2049 County Road 526, Bayfield. I'm not here to fight over the annexation, David.
Well, I figured you're here to add something good to it.
Well, what I would like to do is address the drainage issue. Derek and I talked for a second over it, but not much. I had Josh out looking today. All of that area of the development is going to drain through a draw through Heidi Holler's property, my property, and Chuck Jensen's property. When that area was proposed for development several years ago, the then town manager, and I don't remember who it was, wanted to put a floodway through all those properties and basically told me if he didn't get it, he'd condemn me. So that gets me fired up pretty quick. But anyway, that will all drain through those properties. I've been there 33 years, it's never flooded. There is one irrigation turnout that comes into that drainage near my property and Heidi's property that could be impacted by flows down the draw. The next issue was the Sunrise subdivision. A lot of these comments are geared towards the town board and the city, and especially after Sunrise. The drainage collection channel picks up all the water off there was rebuilt 3 times because of improper construction and poor engineering design. Very poor. I called the town manager out in the middle of the night 3 times because I was getting flooded when they were constructing. And they had to re-gravel my road. On several occasions, the embankment settled because it was improperly compacted. And we finally got a liner in there that's holding and it's working. But I guess what that relates to is a better review of the engineering to make sure that the channels are designed properly, compacted properly, and I believe the city should be responsible for some QA/QC when these things are constructed. Not just building inspections, but QA/QC of civil features. I do have questions on the queue we were anticipating off of that development. I'd like to know what your queue is anticipated is and how many ponds you're anticipating putting in, detention ponds, and what they'd be designed to hold, and what the anticipated flows out of those would be. The other issue showed out to Josh today, and Derek and I've talked. The Schroeder lateral C goes through 160, crosses over into that drainage right off of your development, but everything drains into there off of your property. And it's in bad shape, as Josh and I saw. It needs work. But anyway, it's right there, it's an open ditch, and all that runoff in that area is gonna go over that ditch or into that ditch unless something has changed. I've talked to Josh some about that today. There's a couple of options. One would be to bury that portion of the lateral across that drainage. Or the other option might be to instead of having to cross through the highway and back through the highway twice, would be to put it on the south side of that highway near the bottom of the Highway 160 fill, where you could go across the draw and connect it. I don't have a good drawing of that here, I'd show you. And I don't think this, I believe this really shows.
I don't know where you're at, but.
So here's the bigger ditch.
Yeah, and it's really hard to tell. Yes, this is the edge of your development, Barry, right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that lateral comes up through the road, loops back around, comes down to the side of the draw. So what it does is just does 180 degree draw. And it's probably been in there for I don't know how many years. I would be willing to bet that it was a CMP, and there's probably not much of it left under there anyway. But basically, those are things that I'd like to see handled, dealt with, and I'd like to see the engineering when they get that far to see what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Blanchard, 627 Louisiana Drive. I just have a question for the development team, and that is the 163,000 square feet of commercial, is that the property size or is that the footprint for the commercial buildings themselves?
Let's just make sure there's no more public comment or questions. Come on up.
My name is Heidi Holly, 2179 County Road, 526 in Bayfield. Since you're going to be annexing this as the paper states with the plats and everything, I feel like I can ask the engineers what size the retention ponds are going to be. Those are probably already established, the amount of cubic feet that the ponds will hold before they start releasing, how they're going to be constructed. So I guess I'd like to know that. And I'm thinking back to the other annexation or the other subdivision. We're talking about 1 acre, and that was going to have 3,000 cubic feet for retention area. Well, if you use the same math to go through this 153 acres, that means that those retention ponds are going to have to be huge. I guess what I'm thinking of, I came up with about 459,000 for the total development cubic feet of retention area for that 153 acres. So I guess I'm asking, what is it adequate drainage? And then also, where is the drainage, the overflow gonna come out of, and where is it gonna run? I'm like Mike, I'm downstream from this, and it's, the drainage appears to me like if these are ponds here in the blue, I see one. Could we go back to this preliminary layout?
This one,
Nope,
The
right
next
up, the
one,
one that has the
yeah.
ponds.
That one.
this big
Too
one?
far.
Yeah, are these the retention ponds? They say pond, but I'm thinking there's one here. Are those the retention ponds? And those are designed, they're already designed? No, they're not designed. But they're all, obviously they have a place where you guys are gonna put them. So these are not to scale or anything?
I can address it when
Yeah, we'll wrap up and we'll get answers to you.
Let me just make one more point. When Mike was saying, I'm thinking because of the layout and the topography that this pond is gonna fill up and drain into here, this pond's gonna fill up and drain into here, and this pond's gonna drain in here, and all this ultimately comes down. It kind of slopes like this. And so here's the Schroeder lateral goes around like this, and then my property's right over here. And so I'm gonna catch all this drainage that's gonna come off of this, well, at least 3 sections of the development is gonna ultimately come down through my property. So that's my concern.
Okay.
Is how the drainage is gonna be handled.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is that everyone for public input? Katie or Kristen, do you want to recap the questions and we'll,
Well, first of all, I have the drainage issue and the draining to the draw. He's identified his property, Mike Deming's property, Chuck Jensen, and Heidi Holly's property. I certainly am aware of the Sunrise issue, the collection and channel. So my guess was the engineer would address the drainage probably as a whole, and I'll make sure that any pieces of that get missed, we'll make sure we bring those back up.
Good evening. Philip Brenhack, civil engineer for SEH, 934 Main Avenue, Durango, Colorado. So there's quite a bit goes into drainage design. It's not quite as easy as figuring a 1 acre project had 3,000 square feet of detention, so 3,000 times 153. It depends on soils, your imperviousness, your length of travel time, and kind of all that. And so we haven't got into that design because I guess as Nicole mentioned on one of the previous projects, you know, we kind of evaluate that at schematic design to make sure that we have an adequate area, and then really kind of get into that in the preliminary and final plan. So we're just at annexation right now. So we've kind of set aside areas where we think we will provide detention ponds, and that's as far as we've got at this point. We've kind of located those along natural drainage paths, so that's where we kind of think drainage will collect, and then we'll release it along historic paths. That's what we need to do for water rights downstream. We can't alter the course of drainage, or it affects downstream water rights. So I guess to answer where it will be released, it'll be released along the historic drainage path, and we'll release it at historic drainage rates, which is, I guess, per town code, how it needs to be designed and released. So I guess I'm not quite sure if that answers all the questions.
The other one was the Schroeder lateral C, and would you like to address that?
I can try. And maybe Derek wants to come up here and talk too, but that's been brought up at the last week at the Planning Commission. I don't believe it goes through our site. We've kind of looked at the plats and easements, and there's none on our site, so I don't really see that as being an issue for us. We will keep looking into it, and certainly, you know, address it as best we can if it is on our site. So with, I guess, the other ditch going through our site, you know, the plan is to pipe it. That's what the ditch company wants, and so likely we would do similar for any other ditches that did go through the site.
So I think in order to ease the minds and the reoccurring questions about the drainage,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's a sentiment of the board that we're going to hold the developer accountable for figuring out the drainage and not affecting people downstream. So I just want to ease the minds of the people that keep coming to these and talking about drainage issues. So
Certainly.
just
Yeah,
to have
I mean,
that.
We will not increase the flows downstream of the
And I realize that is all coming up further in the development phases, but I think there is just this reoccurring nightmare for the people downstream right now, so.
No, agreed. Thank you.
And then, what other questions?
So I have of the 163,000 square feet, is it property or building?
So that's property, and it's in our impact analysis, and I can give you that when I sit back down. But essentially, general commercial, we imagine that's going to be 62,000 square feet. There's about 245,000 square feet that are shown as like the lot area, so that's not going to be lot area. Mixed use, 12,000 square feet of commercial space, given the potential for mixed use, and we're not including residential in that. Grocery store is about 38,000 square feet is what we're imagining, and then possibly a hotel with up to 50,000 square feet.
So I think you meant to say the 163 is actually building square footage. You said property, but it's actually
Building square footage, sorry.
Building square footage.
Building square footage, not the lot area.
Okay.
The building square footage.
So,
You're young still.
So, my name is Derek McCoy, and represent the owners of the property. I just wanted to clarify something about the phases. And this project's going to be phased, and it's going to progress based a lot on economics. And so in our marketplace, I think you guys remember when the Economic Alliance came out and talked about what we needed first. Was it housing, or was it commercial space? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so because it's truly a conceptual plan, and furthermore it's a PUD that we're trying to do, the development of that property is going to be fluid. It really is, and it's going to be based on the market, and it's going to be based on the demand for different things. So that's our best estimate of what we think might be the best path to go forward today. But we do know that Bayfield needs housing, Bayfield needs rooftops, people, to get more commercial services out here, which is what we all kind of want. You know, we don't want too much of it, but we want what we want, right? And so I just wanted to take you back to when the Economic Alliance was out here and they talked about what we needed first. And it's always been a debate out here, but really housing is what we need, and that brings people, and then that brings people that'll take a risk and do, you know, commercial ventures. So I wanted to really point that out to you as well. And then the PUD category will allow us flexibility going forward. So for instance, if phase 1B, which is really the second phase of one, if the marketplace is telling us that, you know, we need more, maybe we do need some light industrial, or we do need some incubator type space, maybe we come back in before you guys and we talk about that. And so the PUD gives us that flexibility. So it's truly conceptual. I know it looks big in scale, but we really do think it's going to be a long-term project, and because there's so much to be done up front, that was how the decision was made to just go forward with the whole 153 acres. To speak to the lateral B issue, obviously the engineers will have to do their job. I don't think anybody's going to sneak anything through now. But as far as the lateral B goes, that ditch is not on this property. I think it's either in the right-of-way, or it could very possibly be on the neighboring property. So that would bring some other discussion forward for sure. So I just want to let you know that it's not on this property. And I'll answer any questions you might have to.
So I do have a question, because you brought up the fact of economic phasing. When you're talking about economic phasing, will you be planning drainage for all the acres and all the potential phases, or will you be doing one phase and then doing one in bits?
I would probably leave that up to the engineers to answer, really, but I think drainage is a big enough issue that we'd probably want to look at the big picture as a whole right from the beginning. But ultimately, the engineers will be the ones to tell us really what is best.
Was that the gist of the questions and comments?
Yeah, all the questions on drainage really can't be answered at this point.
Okay.
So there's a lot of those questions, but they can't necessarily be answered.
And we really appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, I will go ahead and close the public hearings and resume our regular scheduled meeting. Does anyone need a 2-second stretch? Okay.
Yes.
All right. We're going to take the 7th inning stretch here. Okay.
I feel like I've read it.
We generally don't have meetings going on.
Oh. Yes, it was, Becky.
I think I'm glad you said that about that, we are now well aware that there's a drainage issue in both developments.
Being in the planning commission, it's like, it's Groundhog Day for me, so.
I'm sorry?
It's like Groundhog Day from the planning commission and then coming back.
Totally. Pardon us.
This school district thing I brought up to Nicole too, because I
How are
could
you?
attend all those meetings in the middle school teaching in the seats. It like used to be, they want to rebuild it. They want to rebuild the whole school. And they're talking about coming back to the taxpayers here in about 2 or 3 years, middle school. They have to do some major improvements just to even use it.
We
There's
fix
problems
it, I
with the
know.
gym, with the lights, with the floor, with the bleachers. There's problems with multiple classrooms. Some of the classrooms get up to at least 150 degrees. I know. Because they don't have proper. There's major issues.
The 7th inning stretch.
Yeah, it wasn't like that. I have a feeling. Because I was in it right when it was built. And those classrooms weren't like that. So it's recent. I think it's the addition that they added to the shop. Yeah, so, but they're bursting. They have no more room.
What? I've never done that before. Never taken a break, but I saw everybody squirming, so.
A little bit. Yeah. Like, might as well. Take a minute.
I watch for her in the morning. Oh, no, I already got the plate number.
That's why I said incubator space.
See it? No, let's go for it. Go for it. Becky, I would let you go home, but I'm not your boss.
Right? I know, I think of her every time when these go late. I'm like,
What I do put you around,
And it's still the same one.
Oh, no, you keep it up.
We'll make sure I grab her.
Yeah, I mean,
It's what we.
Little snack time, like a little kid snack time.
It is, yes, exactly.
I know, I used to have. Remember when they were all.
no, I'm digging for like.
I know, every once in a while.
I probably need
substantive stuff.
There's some down the bottom.
Okay, see ya.
More.
I would let you go home, but.
Me too.
But I'm not your boss, so.
Can I go?
Assuming that like when we come to the decision items on those three projects.
I did.
When you keep getting
You
up,
don't
it's
have
like, maybe I
public
could
hearing.
sneak out
No,
and go too.
no, we can clarify anything, but just keep in mind what we're.
I was getting to a point, I'm like,
voting
oh.
on today. Yeah, that, I think that's where we get a little ahead of it.
But it was like, I figured we were
Yes.
coming close to maybe I could say, hey.
This is just so preliminary.
Have you done your studies for the meeting?
I mean, I still have questions. What means one?
Yeah. Try to,
What's the topic?
don't drink a ton of water.
We got Kristen and.
Legally or? Or to let
I'll let you think about that. All right, we gotta remember what we are here to vote on tonight.
Or something that means something.
Come and visit.
Start to fade.
I know.
All right, hang tough.
Fading fast here, boys. Where are we on the agenda here? What is?
We just gotta we'll get Lori back in here and Katie and.
Pine River Valley Church. I mean, that's not the meetings.
I'm sorry, you closed the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I have to open up general public input for our new business.
See, and that's it.
There's a lot of us that are not church.
On, under new business, D, rentals pre-annexation, did we get anything in the
Yeah,
document?
it's on 399.
$3.99.
You're in the abbreviated packet,
He just sent me a
I
video.
believe.
He did a big mound
So it's in the
competition.
back in the regular packet.
In the big one.
Yeah,
Okay,
And just
I couldn't download the big one.
yeah, it's,
I sat there about an hour later, I thought,
He didn't
screw
like
this.
that. He was
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Oh, I see.
stayed upright.
What was
there's Lori and Katie.
They want to put that.
We don't need to hold this. Let's just go. 100%.
Yeah,
That's Jim Village? That's the storage units?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
I was thinking it was in. That was the highway, and then wait a minute, I'm south of the highway.
I was like, that's gotta be storage
Okay.
units.
Okay.
All three of us are like
Yep.
Kristen's screen. Where in the Platts County?
all right, here we go.
You know what would go along with somebody from the audience came up with chocolate? That would,
That's bribery.
That's
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and resume our regularly scheduled meeting. Moving on to new business. Do we have any general public input pertaining to items 5A through D on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5A, 2022-03 Marlin Village PUD sketch plan. Questions, comments, discussion from the board?
okay with the fact of having be required to have the sidewalks, and I'm okay with the setbacks.
We're talking about Marlin
wrong
Village. Yep.
Sorry.
Tiny village.
Tiny village. Oh,
Tiny
yeah,
home.
Tiny home. Yeah, sorry, I skipped one.
So keep in mind, this is, we're looking
There-
to approve the PUD sketch plan.
There again, I would just echo one of my comments from earlier is that when you put your asphalt in, if you border it with a concrete curb of some type, even if it's just a very narrow pan, it keeps that keeps your asphalt in place, and it'll wear better over a long period of time.
Once again, we're talking about
I'm-
Marlin Village, which
this
is gravel.
I'm speaking to that, yes, I am. I understand.
I think you're talking to Orchard.
No.
He's saying in addition to
I'm-
Orchard, this
I-
one as well should have the
Oh.
same
I'm-
style
I'm-
of
exactly.
pan.
It should have a pan on it in places where it's needed. And I understand that they say that there's gonna be gravel
Yeah.
and it's gonna percolate. But in places where it's not, I'm saying,
I think
Good.
that's
Okay.
a condition of the homeowners association. Inside, it's a private.
well,
He's just making a
I'm
recommendation.
just saying,
You're
a
just-
suggestion. I don't care whether, I realize that the homeowners association is going to take care of this. I'm saying that there are construction techniques that should be employed to get better life out of your asphalt and your other appurtenances that are involved there. That's all I'm saying.
So my question is that going to be a condition that you're going to add to the approval, or is that a recommendation that you, would be
It
a
would
great
just be a
idea for the
recommendation.
final,
Yeah.
when it comes to final?
Excuse me.
I would just say it would be a recommendation that they should give consideration to before they get to their final approval.
Well, I like the idea of having a tiny village in town. It's quite popular. It's a very affordable housing solution for people who can't afford, your traditional type homes. So I definitely know that's something that's needed in our community, just in the county in general. So I like the idea of having it.
Okay. I would,
Okay with that? You ready
I would
for the
entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would move that we entertain alternative action A, which is approving the Marlin Village PUD sketch plan with the findings and conditions as written down in the report.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to 2022-01 Orchard PUD preliminary plan.
Okay, now I can say it. I like the idea of the sidewalks and that they're okay with it.
We're not budging, we're not budging on the
Not
sidewalks.
budging on the sidewalks, and I don't care about the setbacks. It's a PUD, that's the purpose of it.
Yes.
I mean,
very
I'm,
little.
I'm glad that it's not 22 units that they're asking for, to be honest with you. I think it goes better with the more openness of our community and how all of our other housing seems very open, that it would feel more that way than it could be, I guess you could say.
I agree, I think it's up to the buyer to determine if that's somewhere they would want to live, if they're too close to their neighbor.
I do have a question on the conditions, since there was a significant amount of discussion about drainage. Where is that mentioned in the conditions?
That was my question as well.
It's on, so it's,
That'll be in
The
Yeah, it's on the-
land
That'll be a
use
final
codes.
geotech report.
it's on the next,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again?
It's the geotech report
It
where it
would
It's in the
says,
geotech report?
yeah, so on the conditions that we have,
Yeah, I
on
see
there.
E, the
Yeah.
final geotech report. That includes the drainage.
It does
Yeah.
not. There's a
And-
separate drainage plan that they've already submitted, and they need to finalize that. And condition A really covers that. It's spelled out
land
in
use code
section
3.6.
3.6 of the land use code.
3-6, okay. That's fine.
any other questions or comments? I would entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I would move the board approve alternative action A, which is the approval of the Orchard PUD preliminary plan with the findings and conditions as printed.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to our 2021-12 Bayfield East annexation. We also have the inclusion of ordinance 473 and the annexation agreement.
So I understand that there was some modifications, some edits, corrections, I said, by the town attorney. And if Community Development Director Killian will just kind of find that page for us so that we're identifying the correct.
Sorry, it's haunted. And so we want the ordinance first, or the?
Well, I just want to make sure the agreement, there was some.
They're both in here, under
and what-
the packet.
Just to make sure, so currently, right now, we have the ordinance at pages 382 and the annexation agreement at 385. Are those the ones that have been corrected
Yes.
by the town attorney?
Correct, and the applicants have also, so everybody's reviewed those.
Did you want to just kind of summarize what you found?
Actually, they're all the corrections were non-substantive.
Okay.
Just your grammar.
Okay.
And a couple of typos. So, reading those corrections, I just want to make sure that whatever's signed is the correct one, and that will work. Thank you.
All right, questions, comments?
On condition E of the approval, in condition E, I think it would better read, instead of gas wells, to say gas well operations and facilities, which would include the gathering lines as well as the gas well and the pad.
Can we update that in the conditions?
Gas wells and facilities.
That's what operations.
Operations and facilities.
Operations and facilities, yeah.
And we would be looking for a motion to include the ordinance and the agreement, and we can do that all at once, if anyone is ready to entertain a motion here.
I'd like to make a motion to approve alternative action A with one change on condition E to include gas operations and facilities. The approval is the Bayfield East annexation and initial zoning with the said conditions on our report, and is also to include ordinance 473, the annexation plat and the annexation agreement.
I would second that.
All right, any further discussion from the board? Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to the Reynolds pre-annexation. $3.99 in your packet?
Page 399.
Page 399.
So this is a pre-annexation request from Robert Reynolds, property at 39736 Highway 160, which is in Gem Village. It's approximately 2.7 acres in size. They currently are on the town of Bayfield sewer, and they would like to receive water from La Plade. So this is the process. We do a pre-annexation request to the Board of Trustees, and what that means is if they're ever in the future, we want to annex Gem Village, this property has to agree to come into the town of Bayfield city limits as part of this agreement to receive La Plade water.
Attorney Goldman, I've had to recuse myself from any discussion of La Plade and Gem Village. Is this the time I also need to do that? I'm already hooked into the
You
LaPlante.
are. Yeah.
It's been a while.
It's a great question, and thank you very much for declaring that, but it doesn't sound as if you've got any sort of stake in any decision at this point, so
Okay.
no need for recusal.
Great. All right, do we have any questions from the board?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Reynolds pre-annexation agreement.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Black.
Yes.
Trustee Dallison.
Yes.
Trustee Joswick.
Yes.
Trustee Moreland.
Yes.
Trustee Politis.
Yes.
Trustee Cesaro.
Yes.
And Mayor Tarkington.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right, moving on to the discussion portion of our evening. We have case number 2015, CW 3017, the ruling of water referee.
So on the 24th, this ruling, 24th of March, this ruling will be final. And Public Works Director Schultz is basically putting together a presentation about what this water will mean for the town of Bayfield. So everybody can't wait for that exciting presentation.
Yeah.
Does
Yep.
Josh get to sit through that before he's out of here?
You all have a good time.
It's still considered old business.
But,
You and I will go to the bar.
Okay. Any questions or moving on to our multimodal transportation and mitigation options fund.
Yes, so town staff has been talking with CDOT. As you heard in the Bayfield East, we're talking about the new intersection, signalized intersection at Bayfield Parkway and 160. But as part of our conversations, town staff has concerns with the amount of pedestrian traffic. Bless you. Thank you. The amount of pedestrian traffic that's crossing the highway here, kind of at that midpoint between the current signal and the proposed new signal, connecting the pawn shop to North Commerce Drive. And so we've had a discussion with CDOT about that as well. And they suggested we look into the Multimodal Transportation and Mitigation Options Fund, which is a 50% match for multimodal, so pedestrian, bicycle access points. And so this process would require us to, on the back page, it talks about, we have to do a study to even determine if there's a warrant for that type of mid-highway crossing. And then we would have to do the project design and then the construction. And their suggestion is we ask for all of that funding all at once, and then if it's determined it's not warranted, we give that funding back because we can't move forward with the project. And so Katie and I have been talking a little bit about the Bayfield East too, the signal and how we want to fund that. And so we wanted to have this discussion with the board tonight. We don't want to spread ourselves too thin in terms of trying to get funding for highway improvements. And so one question we'd like to ask the board is, would you like us to still try and apply for that mid-crossing? Or do we want to look at maybe trying to apply for this MMOF funding, maybe safe routes to school and other funding for the Bayfield signal, hoping that the students that might be using that crossing now to get to the middle school and the elementary school to be able to utilize a signal and cross at the east side to get to access to the schools. So I think the question is, do we want to have 3 crossings along that highway section? And if we do, then we should look at this mid-section crossing and apply for some funding, knowing that we're going to need to do a 50% match on this one. Or do we want to look at this funding and applying it towards the signal?
I still think you're going to get those kids cutting through.
I do too. And
It's a long way to walk either way. They're always
no,
going to use
it's
that
the
cut.
shortest point
Yep.
from A to B, and
All those houses, right there on the south end. Look at all those houses.
Okay, so we
Well,
will proceed with trying to apply for that funding for the mid.
I do have a question. Back up a little bit. Do we have a rough idea of what we're actually looking to do there?
So that's going to be part of that study. The study
Okay.
will, because there's different options. I can kind of tell you a few. There's what's called a hawk, and if you're familiar with Durango, where the fire station number 2 is on Camino, there's a hawk where the pedestrians push it and those lights flash.
You couldn't pay me to cross there.
So that's an option.
no,
There's also a rapid light option, which is the one that Durango has at the Commons Building on 7th Street. And that has a protected median in the middle.
Yeah.
So those are 2 options we can look at. But again, the study will give us a better idea of
Yeah,
what
okay.
we need to, and CDOT has some multimodal standards that once we get the study going, we'd have to apply their standards, and that might give us a better direction of what we need to be looking at for that crossing.
Okay.
Be nice to do something because, you know, for me, crossing right there, the traffic speed limit is 55 miles an hour, and if I look both ways and it's clear up to the lights, by the time I'm even 2/3 of the way across, that traffic is almost on you if it's moving at the speed limit.
I think that's another proposal that we're working with
Right,
CDOT
just
on
to get
is,
that speed limit
yeah,
down.
Lower 'em.
especially
And
between
if
those
we
2
got it down to
signals.
45, that would be helpful, you know, that doesn't keep people from exceeding the speed limit, but it does at least give us options for enforcement.
All right, well, we will get our contract engineer to help us and get a good cost estimate.
Okay. Board reports.
I was supposed to go to a meeting this afternoon, I babysat instead.
Another short timer. RHA.
I
what-
missed it.
Okay. I don't know. I have everything coming up.
Yeah, I didn't get to
Region
the
9
RHA meeting.
Alliance, it's coming up.
Yeah, and there will be one more big meeting between COG and Region 9 here this month. I think that's set for Thursday.
All right, March 30th, 7:30 a.m. employee breakfast. Everyone's invited.
Certainly, and there will not be any town business. We certainly would like to have the trustees there and thank our departing trustees. And so 7:30, some fresh waffles.
All right, and
Whipped cream?
No.
Absolutely.
Chicken,
April
right?
5th.
No, I'm sorry, no chicken.
What?
We just can't make this, fry the chicken.
April 5th, we will swear in our new board.
Chicken bacon.
And
And so the current board will basically do the old business, which will really be the minutes. And then